It says it's live.
It's Carrie.
Hello and welcome to Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence. I'm Tony Rathman.
And this is Cherie. How are you guys?
Chris, all good with you guys?
Hi, everybody. Audra Keeler.
We have a very special guest for our audience tonight. Tonight we have Brandon Alvis, who is the founder of American Paranormal Research Association. And I'm sure, as many of you know, the star on the popular hit TV show Ghost Hunter. So welcome, Brandon.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. We've got an exciting show for our audience tonight. Brandon supplied some great clips of evidence over his years of investigating. But before we get to those, Brandon, why don't you give our audience kind of a background of how you got involved in the paranormal?
Absolutely. You know, in 1995, I lost my oldest brother to cancer. And in 2004, I lost another brother to suicide. So that kind of sent me on my journey into the paranormal. It wasn't really about having an experience per se prior to that. It was just having to grow up at a young age, experience death, and then, having that thought process, is there an ultimate transition? Is there a possible existence of a life after death? And that's what really got me involved in the paranormal. And before I ever stepped foot into the field and did any active field investigation, I read as much literature as I could get my hands on and really wanted to figure out exactly how I wanted to investigate the paranormal. I read everything about psychic phenomena to scientific investigation, and I always leaned more to the scientific side and scientific principle side of it. So before I ever stepped foot in the field, I started reaching out to medical doctors, scientists, engineers, people that I can consult to help me remain grounded in scientific principle before I went out and actively investigated in the field. So I put together this panel, consulted these people, and they helped me be the investigator that I am today. So in 2006, I founded the American Paranormal Research Association. And since then, I've been working with some of the best investigators I can find. One of them being a man named Dr. Harry Clore. He's the only person in history to receive 2 PhDs simultaneously in any discipline. And he received those in physics and chemistry. So I've been working with him and the rest of APRA since 2006. And that led me to where I am today with Ghost Hunters.
Wow, that's fantastic. So the first question that comes to my mind is, what was your first paranormal experience that really, opened your eyes that, okay, this, I know people that get started in it and they're like, okay, maybe this exists, maybe it doesn't. But what was the first one that really shocked you to the core that you went, oh my God, this is real?
I think it's going to be one of the clips we're going to be playing tonight, actually.
Awesome.
It's the RMS Queen Mary apparition that I collected in the winter of 2008. I collected that in the first class pool changing stalls on the RMS Queen Mary in Long Beach. I was down there around 2:30 to 3 a.m. with a APRA investigator in training and a security guard. And I handed her a mini DV camera and was teaching her how to do an EMF sweep. So she had no idea the camera was even on. Wow. And about 9 months later, I reviewed that footage because I thought it was just kind of throwaway footage. It was a training session. It was nothing more than that. Lo and behold, we captured this unbelievable image that to this day has been analyzed and looked at by many, many experts, one of them being Dr. Clore. That's actually one of the pieces of footage that got him involved with the organization, with APRA. So that is the moment that really, helped me and gave me the fuel I needed to continue in the paranormal. Because there were so many times for years I wouldn't have any experiences or wouldn't collect anything I would consider empirical evidence or factual data.
Right.
So that was always, a big struggle with my belief. I'm a skeptic. I call myself a natural skeptic. And a lot of times there's a negative connotation associated with the term skeptic, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times there's people out there that call themselves skeptics that really aren't skeptics. They're just non-believers. A skeptic is a person that wants to find evidence that it exists, not wanting to believe it. So if you go into the field and you're a skeptic, you have to find proof, find empirical evidence and data. But if you're a non-believer, you're already biased, so it's difficult.
So true. Hey, Chris, just a quick question. Is your screen moving? Because mine's froze.
No, I've been texting you guys telling you it's been frozen for a couple minutes now. The sound was working, but now it's frozen.
Are your kids off the internet?
Yeah, they're off internet.
What? Oh, hold on. Yeah, something. What about messages? We had people, right? If any of our listeners are out there, if you can just send in a message, let us know that you're receiving this.
Nada.
No, nothing yet.
Well, there's a 20-second delay. Yeah, shoot.
Sharice came through. Ron.
Ron is saying audio's good. Frozen screen.
Audio, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed our screen is frozen too. I'm trying to figure out why. I apologize for this. I was hoping this was going to be a night with no glitches. Everything was going good, but we definitely have. We
can do a podcast because they're hearing us.
Yeah, which is great, but okay. 1 second. Let me just check out what's going on here.
While you're figuring that out, Bill Alzate said, FYI, Brandon is the tech leader in the industry.
Thank you, Bill. That's nice, man.
All right. That should have unfroze it. Looks like we're moving now, so we should be good. So, sorry, Brandon. Didn't mean to cut you off. I just noticed.
No worries.
I just noticed our video was not moving. That's delayed, honey. That'll take a minute.
Okay.
Make sure your sound's off, though. Otherwise, it'll echo.
Yeah, it's off.
Okay, so sorry, Brandon. I forgot what we were saying due to that small technical difficulty.
See, this is what happens when you have 3 paranormal groups on the line at the same time.
That's right.
You're getting anomalies in your equipment.
Okay, I think we're online now.
No,
Yep,
we never went offline. It just froze, and I'm not sure why. So, glitch number 7 for episode 7, but usually there's only one, so we should be good. So that's what you were saying, Brandon, about how you got involved in it. Just absolutely fantastic, and I know that everybody who gets involved in the paranormal always has some story that is their starting point, and it's usually one of 2 scenarios. It's either that they started at a really young age where they were experiencing spirits, seeing spirits, and they grew up with it, and therefore it led them down that path, or it's one shocking aspect where they ran into something and it just changed their entire perspective, and then, of course, their curiosity was grown, and then they followed that path, which is, I guess, what happened to me. Cherie kind of grew up with it, and I was completely non-believer.
He was very, very skeptic.
My father is a chemistry, physics, and physical science teacher. So,
by the way, Dad is watching.
And he's watching right now.
He is on. Hi, Dad. But anyway, so if it wasn't explained by science, it didn't exist. And until I married Cherie, and one Valentine's Day, she said, "I want to go ghost hunting." I'm like, "What?" So I took her. And what we came back with, it took me months to try to mentally explain how that happened and how we were getting voices when no one was around, and things and pictures that weren't there. So, but that's a really cool story about how you got into it.
Yeah. How young are you? Did you start with this paranormal field?
I was about 19 when I actually stepped foot in the field, but I started really looking into everything at the age of 17 when I lost my second brother to suicide, and that kind of, it just pushed me in that direction to look into the possible existence of a life after death. And I've always been a huge believer in Einstein's theory that energy is neither created nor destroyed.
Right.
And we're obviously made up of energy. We're firing off neurons at all times. So my question is, where does that energy go when we die, and does it somehow, in some way, retain consciousness? So it wasn't until I was probably about 19 that I actually went out into the field and started actively investigating, because I wanted to really get down a protocol and a methodology prior to going out and investigating. It's tough. There's no experts in this field, as we all know.
Right.
But going out there, I wanted to make sure I had as much knowledge as possible about the way I wanted to investigate before I actually went out there. And, luckily enough, I met, and put together this panel and consulted these people over the years, and they really helped me push me into that direction of scientific principle, which I've been using as much as possible and use it, as gospel almost, if you will. So
No, absolutely. And you're right about the energy. It can't be created or destroyed. I mean, even science explains that it can only change form. So if the soul's energy, which, makes perfect sense, then yeah, it would make perfect sense that it could only change form and therefore doesn't get destroyed and has to live on. But with that said, I'm going to play one of your first clips. And I'm going to tell you what the clip is. It's actually EVPs that you captured in the pool area of the Queen Mary. And if you'd just like to give our audience, before I play it, a little intro about how you captured these and what you were expecting, maybe compared to what you actually got, which are really great, by the way. But go ahead.
Absolutely. So we talked about this apparition footage I collected in the same area in the RMS Queen Mary in first class pool in 2008. So we returned a year later to try and find some kind of logical explanation for that footage, trying to recreate it best possible. So we went and we started conducting an EVP session in the first class pool. And we started to mimic Peter James, who's, famous for the show Sightings back in the 90s, who claimed that there was a little girl named Jackie haunting the first class pool. And he would call out to her. So we said, let's try what Peter did, see if we get any results. And so that year later follow-up ended up, providing some really great data and some amazing audio that we've actually had tested through a spectrum analysis. And we do not have a logical explanation for it. So we were there calling out to this little girl, Jackie, and all of a sudden we not only heard this audibly, but recorded this with the digital audio recorders that we had at the time.
Awesome. All right, well, let me play that for our audience. And here it comes right now.
In 2009, APRA traveled to one of the most recognized haunted locations on the West Coast, the RMS Queen Mary, located in Long Beach, California. The EVP you are about to hear was collected in the first-class pool area, where the spirit of a young girl named Jackie is reported to manifest. It is clear that the voice was audible, as you will hear APRA founder Brandon Alvis and investigator Joey West react to the voice.
Come closer. No way. Get out some of that. Get out. Go. Get out.
Wow. That was amazing. And those are extremely powerful EVPs. I mean, you can hear those words clear as a bell. Get out. Help me. Just amazing. Could you hear them with your own ears, or was it only on the recording that you realized they were there?
It was extremely audible. It was unbelievable. It was so audible to the point that we thought that the Queen Mary might be messing with us. Right? We thought that there was possibly a speaker system, which in that area they do have like a little attraction that they do during the day where they show, little clips of what they say is ghosts and whatnot. Just it's like a Disneyland kind of attraction.
Right.
So we came back again a couple months later with an electrical engineer as well as an audio engineer to try and recreate that. We even went as far as to play little kids' voices through speakers to try and recreate the acoustics. Oh, wow. And we were not able to recreate that in any way, shape, or form. So not only was that an amazing personal experience, but it turned out to be some amazing data that we had tested by an audio engineer through spectrum analysis, and he broke that down frequency by frequency, and he could not find a natural or man-made explanation to the voice. So a year later, from that footage that we collected, it seems that there's a consistent phenomenon taking place there at the RMS Queen Mary, specifically in the first class pool and the first class pool changing cells.
So let me add to that a little bit with experience. So when I was 15 years old was the first time I stepped foot on the RMS Queen Mary, and I heard the little girl audibly in the pool area. And then we returned in April of 2015, and we did the overnight investigation for 4 hours, and we ended up in the pool area. We actually ended up also in the changing room where we audibly heard the little girl again.
Yeah.
And when I listened to your clip today, you can ask Audra, I freaked. I can tell you right now, from the time I was 15 to the 2015 to your clip, that is the same exact voice. It is consistent.
Yeah, and that's another interesting point that you bring up, because when Peter James did the show Sightings, he had this happen when they were filming, right? They heard this audible voice just like you did, just like I did. So what I did is I actually had that audio tested next to the audio we collected, almost identical. And we're talking like 20 years difference, right?
Wow.
And so that right there, to me, that's starting to create a pattern, some real empirical evidence and data that we're dealing with something we can't explain. So I love that. That's when it really starts to get exciting for me.
Yeah, that is exciting.
Yeah,
you guys are so lucky that you get to investigate at the pool, because when we went there,
they wouldn't even let you anywhere near the door, let alone through it.
Really?
Oh.
Well,
it's shut down now. Yeah, big time.
This was like
we went at a bad time though as well. We went during the October, and of course they had the big Halloween thing going, and so it was bad timing on our part. But one of these days, we're gonna
nowadays it's really unfortunate. They're having some very bad structural problems with the ship. It's sinking. So a lot of people don't know that, but it's sinking, and the first class pool, which is a exquisite Art Deco, amazing piece of architecture, if you will, insane, and it's almost ruined. It's just the preservation aspect of the Queen Mary is very unfortunate.
Yeah, that's sad too, with such an elegant history with it, and I know that you're a big history fan as well, and when places like that do start to deteriorate, fall down, fall apart. It's sad because there are so many things that are lost, including many of the spirits that hang out in these locations. So
right, exactly. And that's another thing, is when people think about ghosts and hauntings, they always kind of have a romanticism associated with the Victorian era and the 1800s, and like obviously our country's history is limited in that regard, but you don't really think about World War II history and hauntings associated with each other, right? So you have this amazing piece of World War II history in the RMS Queen Mary that it's unique. It's very unique to have.
That is so true. So true. But with that being said, I'm going to show your next clip from the RMS Queen Mary, and this is the apparition one. So do you want to give a little lead into that?
Absolutely. So in the winter of 2008, myself, an APRA investigator in training, and a security guard went down to the first class pool changing stalls, because you had to be accompanied by a security guard at all times when you were accessing this part of the ship. So I took down the APRA investigator in training. I handed her a mini DV camera back in the old tape days. Everyone remembers that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And an EMF detector. And I was teaching her how to do an EMF sweep. So she had the mini DV camera in one hand, EMF detector in the other hand. It was just a training session, just to show her how to properly try and find natural EMF as well as man-made EMF. And 9 months later, I looked at this footage, which I thought was just scrap footage because of the training session. We collected what you're about to see in the right-hand changing stall at the end of the changing stall area in the RMS Queen Mary. And to this day, it's been looked at, tested, analyzed by many people. We have yet to find an explanation for it, and it's exciting.
All right. Well, I'm going to play this now, and I may play this one twice because it does come by quick. But here it is. Take a look for yourself.
In the winter of 2008, the American Paranormal Research Association conducted an investigation of the RMS Queen Mary's first class pool. The footage you are about to see was collected during an EMF sweep of the changing stalls. The only people present were 2 APRA members and a security guard. You will now see the raw footage of an unaccounted for figure sitting in one of the right-hand changing stalls.
Okay,
Oh my
that
God.
is so cool.
That
It's
gives me a chills.
You can see the silhouette I think I can see hair, longer hair.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
brown
You see
hair.
the eyes?
You can see the eyes. You can see facial structure. That's incredible, Brandon. That's an awesome capture.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the eye, that's been a huge topic of controversy, right? Because a lot of people instantly say, well, it's a living person because of you're seeing a reflection in the infrared light with the eye. But that's actually been looked at by two different eye doctors, medical doctors, who have both come back and said that the way that the eye is supposed to react to infrared light is in two ways, the pupil and the cornea. He said in this particular piece of footage, it's only reacting in one way, the pupil. So obviously your pupils dilate in the darkness,
Right.
but he's saying he can say without a shadow of a doubt that's not a living person. We've been told that twice,
That's
which makes
awesome.
that clip even more interesting. And again, we don't know how any of this works. So we don't know how entities manifest. We don't know how the paranormal manifests. So I think that we have a really great clip here. And I think it's something that we've had tested and analyzed for so many years now, over 10 years. So it's amazing. Is it a ghost? I don't know if I can say that. But I definitely can say it's definitely, it's not a living person. So it's
Right.
definitely an interesting clip for sure.
That it is for sure. And I'm going to play it one more time just because I'm sure the audience is like, let me see it again. So here it is one more time for our audience.
In the winter of 2008, the American Paranormal Research Association conducted an investigation of the RMS Queen Mary's first-class pool. The footage you are about to see was collected during an EMF sweep of the changing stalls. The only people present were two APRA members and a security guard. You will now see the raw footage of an unaccounted-for figure sitting in one of the right-hand changing stalls.
Okay, that's just incredible.
I'm gonna have a nightmare tonight.
So what's phenomenal about that is if you actually look up the history of the little girl that died in the pool, most people will assume from the stories that it was a little blonde girl. No, Jackie was actually a little brunette.
Well,
So it almost makes you wonder if that's what you caught.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, because if that's true and she was a brunette and not a blonde, that matches. And about the same, that girl looks like about the same age as the girl that drowned in the pool. And if you're hearing her on a regular basis, like Brandon, you said you caught her voice, and Chris, you said you caught it how many years later, same voice. Well, then somebody's making that voice, and what you just saw might very well be what's making that voice.
Right.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. I think that, with any style of haunting or any type of phenomenon that takes place, if you start to see this play out and patterns emerging over a span of years like this, I think that that's giving credibility to what's going on at the RMS Queen Mary, which I think is very interesting. That's the type of research I like to conduct. You don't just show up to a place for a weekend and then take off, right? And then say, oh yeah, I found proof of ghosts or proof of the afterlife. No, it's going to take time, a span of years. And the more data you collect over that span of years, I think it gives it a lot more weight and credibility.
You're absolutely right on that point. And, that is one of the downfalls of jumping from location to location, is that you don't spend enough time there. And, it's one of the things that we do with the hospital that we run is we've got access, like I said, 24/7. And in the last year, I can't even tell you how many times we've been down there. But when you can recreate instances that occur and you can start connecting dots and getting names, which we've done many, many times, and then get those names to answer back to you again on a separate occasion. You're right. It takes years to get the information to be able to start connecting those dots, and it's not going to happen over a week or a weekend at an investigation. You can still have a great time and capture great stuff, but if you're trying to really connect dots and figure things out as to what's truly going on, you're right. It takes time to do that. All right, so I am going to move on. That was excellent set of clips, though. I love those. The next one I'm going to play is from the Silver City Ghost Town. And I believe this was, yes, it was an EVP. And it's titled Stop Looking at Me. You want to give an intro to that one?
Yeah, this is actually collected at Silver City Ghost Town in Bodfish, California, which is a collection of various historical buildings from mining towns that were brought to one area. And actually, it's a collection of those buildings now, kind of set up like a museum, if you will. So I went out there, and I think I was 2011, I believe, and investigated that. And we were doing a bunch of solo runs at that time just to try and cut down on contamination. We wanted to kind of test how a solo run would work, cutting down on all that contamination, and to see what would happen. And I was in the old church by myself when all of a sudden, one by one, all of my devices on separate battery sources started to die, which was very strange. At the moment, at first, I kind of just assumed that, oh, they're all dying because obviously the batteries are out. But little did I understand that right before that, I just put brand new batteries in, and these are all separate battery sources. So one by one, they started dying. And then all of a sudden, the infrared light on my camera died. So I walked up, changed out the battery, and all of a sudden, you hear a voice comment on the situation. And it's pretty clear.
All right. Well, here that clip comes.
At this time, the most significant series of events took place in the church. Motion detector 1 was set off at the same time camera 2 died. At this moment, I was not aware that the IR illuminator on camera 2 died at the same time. What happened next made this series of events even more significant.
This camera's dead. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna take some, no way. That was kind of weird.
Wow.
Stop looking at me.
Yeah, for him to literally just flat out say, "Stop looking at me." Incredible and very audible, easy to understand each word. I mean, there's no confusion in what was said. That's amazing. The incredible capture.
Because it seems like you're looking on something. That's the reason probably the spirit, stop looking at me. Seems like you're seeing something. Did you see something in there?
I didn't know, but I think that in some strange way, I think that they're referring to the camera, and by this infrared light draining, it completely went black. So you could not see anything as soon as that infrared light died. So I think it has something to do with that, because as soon as I turned that light back on, that's when this voice was captured. So it's almost like there was a consciousness associated with whoever this was, knowing that there was a camera involved, which there was a lot of people that go there, paratourism and stuff like that. Right. So I think that if there are entities there, I think they would be very aware of technology and the use of the technology.
Yeah, I mean, we flat out had them tell us to stop filming them, even though we couldn't actually see them. But so yeah, I'm not surprised to have heard an EVP of that nature saying stop looking at me. But that great capture.
Amazing.
Okay, so the next one I've been waiting to play the entire night, and judging by the video, I would say this was probably in your somewhat earlier years of investigating, but this is the old South Pittsburgh Hospital. And the look on your face when you hear this EVP, I grabbed Sheree. I'm like, okay, was this not me 10 years ago? Was that not the same look I had? But do you want to give just a brief introduction before I play this?
Yeah, so I went to the South Pittsburgh Hospital, I think it was 2010, I believe, and I was there for 2 nights, had the place completely to just the 3 of us, myself and 2 other APRA investigators, and during our time there, tornado warnings started kicking off, severe weather, right? So there was a moment we were told that if the tornado touches down, we're gonna have to lock ourselves down in the freezer in the basement at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital.
Wow.
And the fire department knows that we're down there, and they'd have to come let us out. So things were already kind of edgy at that point. So we're walking the halls. The energy is just charged up in that place from a lightning storm. So you could just feel it. You know what I mean? There was just an edginess to it. And all of a sudden, we're walking down the hall, and then out of one of the rooms, a very, very clear, audible voice makes itself present. And we were lucky enough to actually document that personal experience.
All right. Amazing. Like I said, I got a kick out of this one, and here it is. Enjoy.
Where do we want to go?
Oh man,
This is freaking me out, dude.
yeah, it is. I know. I agree.
Well,
it's got us all jumpy.
I'm like kind of shaking, dude.
Yeah.
And
This place is shaking all of us up.
Mm-hmm.
how we? Okay, I say we get this camera and we just free rein. Let's just walk, dude. I mean, we're not only are we dealing with a place that's already ridiculously haunted or known to be haunted, we're dealing with a storm, a lightning storm. Oh my God! Did you hear that?
What?
You just heard that, right?
Yeah,
I should get out again.
I heard it as well.
You just heard that, right?
Yeah,
I should get out again.
I heard it as well.
Wow,
That
you are
was
so young over there. Very young.
That was great. So just that look, that expression on your face, like, did you hear that? I mean, like I said, just I know exactly what that feels like.
Oh yeah, it's quite the experience when you have an audible, what sounds like a human voice coming out of an empty room in an empty hospital. So, but luckily enough, we were actually rolling and had multiple devices capture that. So we got lucky and actually documented that personal experience.
You definitely need to get down to the Copper Canyon Paranormal Research Center, that Phelps Dodge Hospital. We've had that happen numerous times to us down there.
Never gets old.
Yeah. So if you ever get to Arizona, and hopefully this COVID thing goes away soon. But yeah, welcome anytime, Brandon.
I'd love to be there. Love it.
Brandon, Bill has a question for you. He said, can you elaborate on a personal level how it's been working with the paranormal genius that is Grant Wilson?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, I grew up watching Ghost Hunters, right? In 2004 when the show started, and the phenomena that it created and really spurred this whole field that we're in now. I mean, if it wasn't for Ghost Hunters and Grant Wilson and Jason Hawes and Taps, we wouldn't really be doing what we're doing right now. Yep. I think there was a lot of interest in the paranormal, obviously, for many, many years, but no one ever really got a chance to see people actually out there investigating like that. And it was, you know, a big model for me starting my organization and going out there and investigating. So working with Grant and working with him these past 2 seasons has been unbelievable. He's given me a lot of insight, especially when it comes to homeowner cases, because that's something I never really, you know, I would work homeowner cases, but I mainly worked historical locations because I've always been about data collection and trying to further the science of the field. So working with Grant, especially in the homeowner cases and the more personal stuff, really helped me along in my research. So it's been amazing. It's been fantastic working with him.
That's awesome.
That's very awesome. Yeah, and to be able to learn from the people who, like you said, the first set of ghost hunting shows that came out were really breaking that mold of what had ever been shown before. And it did. It laid down a foundation and a platform for all the other shows that followed, but also for all the people that had an interest in it, and to kind of figure out, okay, what happens on an investigation, how do I do this? And it also opened doors for people to be able to talk about it and accept it and share stories and information, broke some of that taboo that was associated with it. So there were a lot of good things that happened from the outbreak of paranormal shows, no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, and they laid the groundwork of, you know, it wasn't some professional group going in or some professional doctors going in to prove the theory. I mean, these guys were plumbers that sat there and talked about which case they were going to do next before they went out and did it. So it brought it home to blue collar work with people like us that are sitting there going, hey, I want to do this too. Yeah. Man, they broke so many grounds with that show. It was amazing.
Pioneer, sir.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that the fact that it wasn't maybe on a a much higher scientific level, brought it down to the average American, or even more than American, because this was shown all over the place. But yeah, it opened those doors to say, hey, this, I can do this. I can give it a try, or at least learn from it, and which was great. All right, the next clip I am going to play is from looks like Heritage Junction. Okay. And this is an EVP that was captured at the train station, I believe. Would you like to give an intro to our audience on that one?
Absolutely. So one, big part of founding APRA and going out and investigating these historical locations, like I was just talking about, was I did a lot of fundraising for these historical locations, because as we know, even to this day, it's very difficult for some of these places to maintain and operate, because there's not a lot of historical interest anymore. So One thing I always wanted to do was go to these places that have never been investigated before. I didn't really go and investigate these places based off of eyewitness testimony. It was more about going out to a location based off of its history, what I like to call the formula of a haunting, right? So I see a piece of history that I think could have some phenomena associated with it. So I approached the Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society, who owns a park called Heritage Junction Park with a collection of historical buildings. One of them being a old train station, the Newhall Ranch House, and then they also have the Saugus train station. So I went out there and started to conduct investigations there, and quickly learned that there was a lot of eyewitness testimony and a lot of paranormal experiences. And so I went up there to run some DVR cables just at dusk. It was just getting dark, and I went up there, started running some cables, and the actual active Amtrak train started to pass by. So you hear the bells ringing, you hear the tracks clinking, and you start to hear a train horn. And it was so loud, I could not hear anything going on in the room. It actually would shake the building. It's that close to the tracks. Wow. And during that time, you're going to hear probably one of the loudest and clearest EVPs I've ever collected take place.
Yeah, this one is amazing, and it is so clear and so loud. You would swear that this woman was standing 2 feet from you screaming into the recorder. But let me play this for the audience. This is an incredible EVP, and here it comes.
The number one EVP on our countdown was collected in none other than Heritage Junction Park, this time at the Saugus train station. Collected on the second floor of the station, the only two investigators present were Brandon Alvis and Joey West. It should be noted that only male investigators were present, as the EVP is clearly female. Also note the incredible power of the entity, as her voice is clearly heard over that of a passing train.
Like the other train. Stay down this way. Like the other train.
www.apraparanormal.com.
Pretty cool.
Just amazing. And the most amazing part is, like you said, you can hear the train coming, and I'm assuming that was obviously an actual train while you were in front of the train station. But her response is directly related to the station and to the train itself. Will that be on the train? I mean, incredible capture.
Yeah. And what's great about that is you can clearly hear what sounds like a British accent, which is interesting, right? Because we're talking about California history here, and Saugus, California was almost like a Wild West kind of town, right? So when I showed that to the president of the Historical Society at the time, her jaw hit the floor, because that's information she never provided to us, because at the time it was a train station, but above that they ran what was called J.H. Tolfrey's Eating House and Hotel. J.H. Tolfrey and his wife were from England, and she died in the train station.
Oh, wow.
That's something she never, revealed to us. So us having that piece of data and showing that really made her a believer. She was always very skeptical and very kind of a non-believer, but once she heard that, she knew right away there was no way we could have
known that or to fake it, right? That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah. And so clear. I mean, we've had one or two that may push that clarity, but that was better even than I think the Class A's that we've had. I mean, that literally was like she was standing right in front of the mic and was as human as could be. But that's amazing, absolutely amazing. All right, so I have one more to play, and then I'm sure both our audience and I'm sure Chris and Audra probably have some questions for Brandon as well. But the last one I'm going to play is from Linda Vista Hospital, and it was an EVP captured. I know in the clip it was talking about Debbie Constantino actually being there during that time. But it says, I'm not going to say what the EVP says, but do you want to give any kind of intro before I play that one?
Yeah, I was actually investigating at Linda Vista Hospital with some APRA investigators, Linda Casebolt and Bridget O'Dean, and we had Mark and Debbie Constantino with us as well. This is years ago. I can't remember the exact date, but we were there conducting EVP sessions, and Linda Casebolt was sitting there with her audio recorder, and you're going to hear actually Debbie Constantino ask a question, and very, very clear response was collected on Linda's audio recorder. Very clear.
Awesome. All right, audience, here that one comes.
Collected at Linda Vista Community Hospital in Boyle Heights, California, APRA was conducting an investigation with the Los Angeles Paranormal Association, Mark and Debbie Constantino, and an array of other investigators. This EVP was collected in a basement hallway that led to the morgue.
How were you associated with the hospital? How were you associated with the hospital?
Just amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing.
So weird.
Remember, we have also an EVP that the same thing too. We're not dead.
Right, and you know what? That's exact. It's funny you say that because that's exactly what I thought of when I heard this. When I hear EVPs, whether they're captured by us or whether they're captured by other people, there is a certain set of language that is used consistently, and it doesn't matter what the location is. Get out is probably the most popular of. Doesn't matter where you go, that's heard. We're not dead. I mean, we've captured that in multiple locations, including the hospital and so many other places. San Carlos. I mean, I can't even think or name them all off. But it's just funny how those consistent sentences are used over and over and over. And "we're not dead" is one that we've heard many, many times. And you know, I think they're trying to convey that message that life does not end when human life does. And, you know, we say, well, you know, ask questions such as, well, when did you die? Well, we're not dead. And they know they're not dead. So,
well, that we caught that one EVP down at the hospital where I was asking, do you know what year it is? And then we got the response like 1939. And I responded back, no, it's been 80 years since, and we caught the bullshit EVP. So whoever it was like, yeah, bullshit.
Right. Yeah. Didn't even believe us that it was, but maybe in their world it's not. But
well, and it also shows that it's, you know, time doesn't change for them, but at the same time, they're intelligent too. They're actually responding, going, no, they're responding to us.
Right.
Direct response to the question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. That's an amazing set. And I know that was only a handful. So if anyone else is looking for additional clips that Brandon has, I got those off his YouTube channel, which I think was listed under the American Paranormal Research Association, which is where his YouTube is. So if you want to see more of what he's captured, he's got some great stuff on there. But it brings me to my first question, and that question is, Brandon, out of all the places that you've been,
what is your most memorable paranormal location?
Yeah, which one stands out to you as the most memorable?
Oh, that's tough. That's such a tough one. I'd say probably a location from season 2 of Ghost Hunters that we did, Fort Stanton, New Mexico, right? You have this location that just has so many layers and layers of history, from the Lincoln County War with Billy the Kid, the Apache Wars, and then one of the first federal tuberculosis hospitals that was ever established. And that's where I actually first implemented the EMCCD camera, which is this amazing technology that we made this tremendous breakthrough with. And we think that we now have an idea into the mechanics and the science behind how these entities may be manifesting. So I'd have to say probably Fort Stanton, New Mexico, because not only of the amazing history, but the unbelievable breakthrough that we actually had there. So amazing place. If you get a chance, Fort Stanton, New Mexico, check it out. Beautiful, beautiful place.
What is your second memorable location?
You're just gonna keep going down the road.
Queen Mary. I think it's Queen Mary.
Right, exactly. Probably have to say the McConaughey Estate in San Lorenzo, California, a place just outside of Oakland. I was the first to ever investigate it. Been actively investigating it for about 10 years now. And again, it has what I always call the formula of a haunting. That's a term you're going to be hearing a lot about here coming up pretty soon. Mm-hmm. Mustafa Gadalari and I are working on a really big project together that should be announced here soon. But that location has just provided such amazing empirical evidence and data that that's one of the locations that really makes me a believer and really pushes my research. And a place I conducted an amazing experiment with Dr. Harry Clore. And again, he's the only person in history to receive 2 PhDs simultaneously in a discipline. And he actually came out there with me and we conducted an amazing infrasound experiment that left him scratching his head and left him saying, I have no idea what the hell's going on in that house. So if you ever get a chance, McConaughey Estate, San Lorenzo, California, very active location with a very, very spooky history.
Awesome.
Pretty amazing.
So I got a question for you, Brandon. So you're in California. You do a lot of investigations in California. I've been to California numerous times, done a few investigations. One of my favorite was Fort Tejon. We snuck in one night. We weren't supposed to be there and did an investigation there. Do you think that San Andreas Fault, I know what my theory is, but between the history, the hauntings, and all the gravitational energy going on there along that California coastline, do you think that has a combination that intensifies California?
I do. I think it's a great point that you make. I think that anytime us as paranormal investigators, if we don't take environmental conditions into account, we're just not doing our job properly. So what you're saying is 100% on the money, because environmental conditions play a huge part into that formula of the haunting, right? I use that term a lot, but I think you're 100% right, especially with Fort Tejon. You have this amazing history. You have some tragedy associated with the place. Yep. And I think that those environmental conditions play a huge part. I think that it does fuel paranormal activity. I think it does fuel some of the unexplained activity that's taking place that, hopefully as we advance and hopefully as we step out of the shadow of pseudoscience, that we start to see some tremendous breakthroughs associated with that environmental conditions. I think it's a really good point that you make there.
Awesome. Yeah. So Carrie Hopper's asking a question, wants to know what your take is on the stone tape theory.
Stone tape theory, based off of a movie, interestingly enough. I think that there's a lot of flaws with it. Stone tape theory has been thrown out a lot, but again, it's based off of a movie, which a lot of people don't know that about. There may be something to it, but I think that there's, a lot to the environmental factors of these haunted locations or these places that are said to be haunted. So I think anytime we look into environmental conditions and looking into patterns within those environmental conditions, pressure, temperature, humidity, EMF, vibration, things like that, the more we see those patterns and see those correlations, you start to have a better understanding of what's going on, right? So that's one thing we noticed when I started implementing the data loggers in the first season of Ghost Hunters, is that when we started to see pressure changes in the environment of these locations, we could almost to the T start to say, hey, look, there's going to be some type of activity, be that EVP, visual phenomena, whatever that may be. So stone tape theories, I think there's a lot of holes in it. I think it's based off of fictional scenario, but you never know. There's no experts in this field. You never know what's going to create activity or cause it. So who knows? But I think that environmental conditions and monitoring that and data logging that is going to be a huge step forward for this field. And the more we do that, I think the more we'll be taken seriously by not only the scientific community, but the public as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. So Bill has a question for you. I need to put my glasses on so I can read it.
I got you, Tony. But he wants to know, can you talk about the Indianapolis investigation at the Basel Theater?
Oh, yeah, the Athenaeum. Yeah, absolutely. That was a location that is unbelievable, right? The Athenaeum was a German cultural center established in the early 1900s. Beautiful, beautiful location in the heart of downtown Indianapolis. And there's some interesting history associated with it. There was a woman named Dr. Kanabe, who was one of the first female doctors in that area, who frequented the Athenaeum and taught health classes there, particularly sex ed. And this goes back again to the formula of a haunting, something that I've been talking about and working on for a long time. I've actually been developing and implementing a classification system for ghosts and hauntings since 2006. And that's something I've been working on and trying to develop that. So one, you go to a location, you say, oh yeah, we found proof of ghosts, right? You don't go to a zoo and say you saw a bunch of animals, right? You go to a zoo and you say, I saw tigers and monkeys and lions and giraffes and elephants. So I think in order to, push this field forward, we have to implement a classification system, start to figure out how this history is associated with the activity and the environmental conditions. How does this all work? What are the patterns? Why is this happening? And that's what I've been doing. So what you saw in that first season with the Athenaeum was a perfect example of me implementing that classification system, where you have this very specific piece of tragic history taking place. You have this amazing type of phenomena happening. We documented that based on that history, and because of that, I was able to classify this as a gray lady haunting, because historically, gray ladies are known to be entities of women that were killed by their lover that haunt a location, and that is exactly what happened at the Athenaeum. And it's exactly the type of phenomena that's been taking place there. So, amazing investigation, a really good source to say, hey, look, with this field to step forward and really step out of the shadow of pseudoscience to be taken seriously, if we can implement a classification system like that, we're going to start to see an uptick in scientific principle, protocol, and methodology. And that was a great investigation for that purpose.
Awesome. Amazing.
The Ron Iacovetti has a question about the Omen House in California. Have you been there, Brandon?
I have not been to the Omen House. It's a strange location. A lot of controversy, right, with David Oben, and it not really being on the site of where the Manson murders took place. Sharon Tate, the Sharon Tate murders.
Right.
So it's tough for me. I know Ghost Hunters did an episode there years ago, and they captured some things. I know Jason and Grant talked about they had some unexplainable things happen there. But then you have these other shows that are a bit on the wonky side that go around throwing around these like pseudoscience gadgets and using these devices that can't be taken seriously in any way, shape, or form, saying there's a lot of activity. So, I mean, is it a cool, hip thing to say that you documented Sharon Tate and the Manson murders? Yeah. Is it a factual phenomenon? I have no idea. I've investigated it for myself, but I think there's a lot of controversy surrounding the location. I know that there's very selective people allowed in there, and I think that's could be suspect at times.
Right.
So,
I completely agree with that. I think what he was actually asking about, though, was the geomagnetic anomaly that's supposed to be, surrounding that canyon that they're perched above. And his comment was in regards to that being, 100% agreed that your environmental conditions definitely have an effect on location.
Absolutely. And that, that's another thing with this classification system that I've been developing that everyone will see a lot more about here in the coming months. That's another thing is that there's a classification where I call it a pseudo haunting, right? Where these things are being manifested by living agents at times, or people that are just wanting to fulfill their own prophecy. So maybe, people go into that location expecting it to be haunted, and the environmental conditions with the magnetic pull in that location, maybe it's creating its own phenomena, right? So that's something to look into as well. Yeah,
no, very, very true. Very true. And it'll be interesting to watch the show to find out more about how you come up with the different levels of classification. But great thing to do, because you're right. And it also, again, it connects those dots, throughout what's happening within the paranormal. And only when those dots begin to connect and align will answers eventually come to play. And hopefully science will be able to catch up and help explain maybe what's going on once that's understood as well. So fantastic work you're doing, Brandon. Just really, really impressive.
Well, I appreciate that. It's crucial. You know what I mean? What we're doing is, if we want to be taken seriously by not only the public but the scientific community, we have to step out of the shadow of pseudoscience, and we can't go to locations and collect this pseudo evidence and say, hey, look, this is proof of a haunting, when there's no empirical evidence or data to back that up. It's not being tested by a third party. It's not being looked at by a professional from a technical industry, and there's no weight to it. You have to have some kind of explanation as to why is this taking place? What's the theory behind it? What's your theory? Why is it taking place? Oh, well, just because it's haunted. No. What's the history associated with it? What's the environmental conditions? What's the data? Where's the empirical evidence? And I think as we develop that system and as we develop that methodology and protocol, I think that's going to be a tremendous breakthrough for this field and really help us step out of that shadow of pseudoscience.
Well, it'll be huge because you'll be able to.
We lost Brandon.
I think we lost. There he is.
Okay.
My back.
He's back.
Oh, there we go.
That's okay.
No, the data and the scientific mythology behind it. I mean, if you think about it, if we can figure out what causes a spirit that's made up of energy to be able to communicate, we might be able to take that scientific evidence and replicate the situation to provide a channel of communication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's one thing that we implemented.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one thing, with this panel I put together, I talked about these scientists, medical doctors, and engineers. I would go to these scientists and engineers. I would say, hey, from your point of view, if ghosts are real and they are manifesting, how would that be taking place? And the theory was thrown at me that it could be photon events, right? So photon events are light events, and these light events carry electromagnetic radiation, which is a very interesting point for the paranormal field. But photons are all throughout the universe, and many scientists that observe these photons believe that these photons may have a consciousness and may have their own will, which is interesting. But I was, I called in a huge favor from the scientific community, and I was given a EMCCD camera. What that is an electron multiplying camera. What that camera is it's a camera developed by the digital imaging scientific community to record single photon events. And I took that out actively into the field to test this theory of it being possible photon events. And we collected these amazing images multiple times. And I even got to the point where I have been utilizing data loggers, and I started to see I would put these data loggers in the line of sight of these of this EMCCD camera to try and collect these photon events. And I started to see environmental changes, and then lo and behold, not long after that, we start to record photon events in that exact same area. Wow. So I think we're making tremendous breakthroughs, and I think this all goes hand in hand, and this is part of the science. This is part of the scientific principle behind it. I'm very excited to continue the research, and I'm excited to provide that to the community and really do my best to help push this field forward.
That's
awesome. Just awesome, Brandon. That's fantastic. Just fantastic.
Now, do you have any events coming up, like TV show coming up?
So right now, with the pandemic, we're not able to film at the moment. So I have been working on a few projects. I've been juggling 2 projects right now, which has been extremely difficult. But Mustafa Gadalari and Mustafa's one of my co-investigators on Ghost Hunters, have been working on a very exciting project we hope to announce in the coming months. I think that everyone's going to be very excited about and very proud of. But also, I'll be doing the Plymouth Paracon here in September. If it doesn't get canceled, we'll see what happens.
Right.
But I'm scheduled to be there in Plymouth. That's soon to be the only event I'm doing for the year.
That's in Wisconsin?
But hopefully soon.
East Coast.
Oh, East Coast. Okay.
East Coast, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and COVID again has had a huge impact on so many Paracons within the last couple of months, and they're being canceled left and right. So hopefully the Plymouth one will still happen. Things will get better by then, so we wish you the best in that. But Brandon, we want to say thank you on behalf of the Entity Voices team, on behalf of all of our audiences. It was great to communicate with you. The evidence and all the work you've done and are doing is commendable, and we want to express gratitude for that, because you're working on some great stuff, and we look forward to keeping an eye on what you're going to be doing in the future. So thank you.
Thank you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure. It's been great talking to you guys.
All right. You have a wonderful night. Chris, you want to give our closing statement?
All right, everybody, stay haunted.
All right, stay haunted. Have a great night.
Thanks, Brandon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. All right.
Hello, I'm Tony Rapp with Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence. Wanted to let you know that the Copper Canyon Paranormal Research Center in Ajo, Arizona took a small break from our public investigations, which are 2 hours from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. every other Saturday and Sunday, and and every week on Thursday nights. We had to take a break due to COVID, but things are starting to lighten up and people are going back to work. So we're going to now allow those to be bookable again. You can still always book your 10-hour overnight investigation from 7 p.m. at night to 5 in the morning. Those have never been shut down. And available to be booked again on coppercanyonprc.com. So please, feel free to go and book your 2-hour public investigation, and we'll see you there. Here's a short clip of what it's like in the Copper Canyon Paranormal Research Center. Enjoy.
Oh, did you hear that?
I did. There's a woman in here. Mary, are you in here again? And this is a bathroom. There is a male talking. I can hear it. Are you in here? Fucking hear that? Yeah. What the heck was that? What the fuck was that? What the heck
should
was
be it.
that? You heard that too? Oh, absolutely. That was in here. It was.
Honey, you're way behind.
Who's in here?
The live.
Hello?
You guys still hear me?
Oh my.
Sorry, we were muted.
Did you hear that?
Okay. Just let me double check one more time. I just want to make sure.
I know something's in here.
It's not showing on Facebook anymore.
Yeah, it should be done.